Happy 4th of July and happy summertime is finally here. The sun is out and I just saw the weather report for it's going to be shining for, it goes through the end of September. So, no, I actually hope it doesn't do that because Glenn and I were talking today about the blooms maybe starting to disappear if we don't get a little bit of that. Anyway, we got some great discussion going on tonight. Dr. Karen is going to kick off us a discussion about what's been going on. I'm sure all of you are aware of the tragedy, and it's the word that I've been using, in the Wilsonville pesticide poisoning, and what we can do as beekeepers. And Mace Vaughn is here from the Xerces Society, and he's going to give us an update on what's going on, that some of the bans and the temporary bans, I believe, that are happening with the work that they've been doing with ODA. We couple of just house cleaning things that if this is their first time here, the restrooms, there's one through this door here. I'll move my mic here in a second. And then through the back door and to the right. Isn't that right, Mike? Yes. And let me see. We have snacks in the back of the room. We'll have a break at the midpoint here tonight. So help yourself to water and veggies that Aggie brought, and a wonderful dip, and some cookies that Mark Wenzel made. He always does a great treat. We also have like to welcome our newest officer. Seth Lee is our director at large, and I'd like to give him a big hand. Woo-hoo! He's back there doing membership stuff because our treasurer is running late. He comes from Beaver Creek. Let me see, what else? So our treasurer report, we'll put that on hold and maybe get to that later on, what's going on there. We've got a reminder that July 11th is movie night, pub movie night. We're going to do, we actually have some raffles tonight. Is it three? Two. Yeah, three more tickets to raffle off for, pardon me? Three more pair. Okay, 3 pairs of tickets for More Than Honey, which is a wonderful movie. You've got to see that, and it's going to be at the Hollywood Theater on July 7th at 7 o'clock. So Pub will be there representing, or we will be there with a table to represent Pub. And so any of you that would like to volunteer and talk to people that are coming out of the movie, there's going to be hopefully a lot of general public there because of the interest in what's been happening with the Wilsonville incident and Hillsborough. So we would love to see as many people there as possible to support this and to be at the table to talk to folks about these, and the more the merrier.
If you Google this, there's about a 3-minute trailer or something. If you want to see some of the issues that they might be discussing. It's both European style beekeeping and German, and John Miller, one of our large 12,000 colony beekeepers, California, Montana, Dakota. Really nice. Anyone want to see this flyer?
Thanks, Julie. We've got some great raffle items tonight. I'm hoping that we can do more than a few. Mike said I could only do one, but I'm petitioning him at the break to see if we can do more than one. But he's the guy that makes that decision. So if I have to arm wrestle him for it, we're probably only going to do one. So. Yeah. So we also have a new segment that we're going to be adding every month, and believe it or not, it is something you can do every month. It's going to be called. It's going to be the Nectar and Pollen Report. This was something that actually Glenn and I kind of came up with this idea. Glenn Andreessen and I, we were talking about, well, what happens in January? Well, there's actually blooms 12 months out of the year. Some months more than others, but there are definitely blooms. And I've learned a lot working with Glenn, just seeing what the bees are going for. And it's important for us to know, as beekeepers, to see what they're feeding on, what sources of nectar and pollen they're bringing in different months of the year. And also so that you can tell your friends and family that near you or near where your bees are to plant those things. And so it's kind of fun. I mean, both Glenn and I do sort of guerrilla farming by planting segments of. Most of my neighbors don't even know it, but I put little plants in their yards late at night. And and then they invite me over and say, look at this cool plant that I have, you know. So some of those will be featured on that when Glenn shows that tonight. Let me see. Next meeting is August 7th. And also, Michael Carlson at the break will be passing out some little sheets for you to put down comments, questions, things that you'd like to see at our meetings. And also, Dewey has, I've asked Dewey, and he said he would be able to do like Ask Dewey is a new thing that maybe we could ask, and then we will take your questions that we don't get to live here tonight, and then if you can write that in shorthand, because Dewey reads shorthand, and then we'll get that to Dewey, and then hopefully we can help him and respond back to you on our Facebook site. Let me see, have I covered everything? Let me see, Mace, Dewey, ODA, donations. I have to say this, that we had a wonderful donation, an anonymous donation through one of our members for $350 to the Portland Urban Beekeepers. And thank you. I think that was somewhat in part because the passion and the energy that came from sort of the silver lining of what happened in Wilsonville has really gotten people's attention. And so it's important. And I'm glad Mace is going to be here tonight to update us, and Dewey's going to have some items more about that. So without further ado, I think we'd like to welcome Dewey back, and thank you.
We said this before, the treatment-free beekeeping conference, the end of the month. There's only about 7 slots. They're trying to hold it to 150. It's a hefty registration, $200. If you're interested, I brought the flyer along, or you can go under Bliss, B-L-I-S-S, Bliss Honeybee at Google App. Some of you may be interested in helping us with the State Fair, the Oregon State Beekeepers Association State Fair Bee Booth. The State Fair goes from Friday, August 23rd to Sunday, September 2. And we need like shifts of 3 different times, 10 to 2, 2 to 6, and 6 to 9, or 10 on the weekends. If you have an interest, you have a day of preference, if you would sign this, and then I or someone will get back to you to see if we can lock you in and get you scheduled. This will eventually be online, but I'm just getting it started now with expressions of interest. If you sign and conditions change, no, this is not a commitment, but just to try to get an early expression of some interest. Okay. I brought the book. It came on Monday. FedEx brought the book on Monday. If you'd like to get a copy, I'll be glad to autograph a copy. This is the last book you'll need for beekeeping. It is all in there. Or for many of you, it's the next book that you need after you've talked at the beginning. It is a book that has both. It has the biology and the beekeeping in it. I think you'll find it of use. If you'd like to take it tonight and you didn't bring any funds with you, please go ahead and take it, so it'll save me having to mail it to you. And it's a 12% discount here at the meeting. So I'll be glad to put one in your hands this evening. Autograph. Okay, thanks. Anatomy of a Massacre is our situation, as Tim indicated this evening. I hope most of you have heard something about this. I hope some of you have heard a lot about it. I know some of you are indeed following what is going along. It involves bumblebees, one main species, and linden trees. Linden happened to be in our nectar and pollen plants of this month one of the heavy lifters. Linden has a major source for our bees. It's a very light honey, almost a color of water when you get fairly pure linden. Has a delightful taste. Among honey connoisseurs, it's one of those that is really a prized honey. It is the best. Mace indicate it is the best. Big crops across the northern tier states. We have an American linden. This is what we call a European linden. There's 2 or 3 species that are planted. The diagnosis on this one is the little leaf linden. In mid-June, Savari was applied to 55 linden trees in bloom in the parking lot of Target, Argyle Square in Wilsonville. Safari is a neonicotinoid insecticide, readily available. You can go into any box store, any hardware store, and pick up this material. You may have been using it or are using it on your roses. It has a number of different uses, all the way to things that are on our animals, our pets as well. This was a apparent violation. The neonicotinoid dinotefuran is a systemic. It's meant to be applied to root, to trunks, and then picked up by the plant, translocated within the tissues in the plant, so that by the time a pest comes along, a pest insect, there's enough of the material translocated that the plant has some additional defense against the either things like aphids or caterpillars that'll feed on foliage. Linden is not a biggie in terms of having pests. That's why it's a favorite street tree. That's why it's in parking lots of stores like Target. It does have aphids. Aphids on this particular species, secretes a very heavy honeydew. Honeydew falls on windshields, and you turn on your windshield wipers and you smear it across your windshield. And so that was the intended target, aphids, and it was probably in response to a complaint. By Monday, this was a Saturday morning before there were many shoppers in the Target. By Monday, massacre of thousands of this particular species, with a few honeybees, a few other species of bumblebee. Bombus is the name for bumblebee, was evident. The Xerces Society was called by a number of their patrons, by a number of what was going on. Many people are familiar with Xerces. They have this very useful publication, Conserving Bumblebees. They have wanted posters for 4 species of bumblebees that are very endangered. This particular species is not an endangered one. It's a very prolific one, reaches large nest sizes, and is a strong flyer. Very easily distinguished. Okay. In eventuality, Mace, who is here with us this evening, and his colleague that helped write this Conserving Bumblebees, are estimating somewhere over 50,000 bumblebees were killed. That's representing in excess of 300 nests of these particular bumblebee. This is all part of Xerces, of course, is the Society for Invertebrate Conservation. We are most fortunate to have them located here in Portland. They have been a leader, world renowned, in terms of initially starting with butterflies, doing marvelous work with stream insects, and more recently with the hiring of Mace and some others on pollinator conservation. So the group there has put this very attractive book, Attracting Native Pollinators Together, along with a number of things. They're working with communities, they're working with individuals, they're working with farmers, they're working with people that manage large pieces of land. All of this directed towards trying to improve the habitat for pollinators, a large number of different programs. By Friday, in looking for some solutions, they rejected the idea of trying to defoliate all these trees, 55. They looked at the idea perhaps of a repellent, but by Friday, with the assistance of Mace and Xerces, they came up with the idea of trying to cover the 55 trees. That was no small task, as you can see, but by Friday, those trees, along with ODA help and the facilitation of Xerces, the trees there in the Target were covered. This little leaf linden is an ideal tree for a parking lot with large islands. It provides shade. It has, of course, a fragrance. It is an attractive looking tree. So it's the right tree in the right place. What may not have been right in this case was the Saturday morning spraying of a week before this with material that is known to be toxic. Question, Helen?
You're saying spraying, and previously you told us that it was supposed to be a systemic. So did they misapply it?
Well, that is yet to be determined. Once you have the materials, there are some of the uses of some of the compounds to apply to foliage. Buried in the information is that this is highly toxic. This is in the category highly toxic to bees, and to avoid application to flowering plants, not crops, flowering plants. But that is not, boom, you didn't see that right away as you looked at the label. Mason.
Yeah, I would just add sort of layer that, I would layer on that yes, it is systemic. Most of these trees were treated with a foliar spray, which at that point, they would call it translaminar. It moves through the leaf tissue, even through the flowers, and at that point, it is systemic in the leaves and in the flowers. So we've got both things going on, where it was sprayed on a Saturday morning when the tree was in full bloom, so there was immediate contact with any pollinators, any bees visiting, but then subsequently, it will stay toxic for a long period of time because it gets taken up into the leaves and continues to come out. And when talking with Valent, the representatives from Valent, the company that makes Safari, it was pretty clear that they thought, yeah, these flowers will be toxic for sure for the duration of the bloom.
Toxic to the bees.
Correct. Yeah. It was just a single application.
In addition, you have heard that a week later, East Washington Street, downtown Hillsborough, is loaded with the same tree. Under one particular tree, there was an additional kill. You can see from the numbers that it was not as extensive. In this case, we're not talking of 5-digit numbers, but certainly 4-digit numbers, probably in excess of 1,000. Curiously, in Hillsborough, the whole tree, there are 200 trees, linden trees, mostly on southeast Washington, and the kill was evident really under 2 trees. Okay, very curious. Okay, and this is what you see: littering the sidewalk in the Target parking lot, people walking all over them, very disconcerting to a number of shoppers. In the case of Hillsborough, this is a major thoroughfare. People walking there is where their market is, their Tuesday market, so people are there at that particular time, and these you can see are quite evident. This is a robust bumblebee. It's about, well, it's much fatter than a honeybee, and so it's very evident when you see corpses underneath the tree. So they did also cover the one tree, one between 3rd and 4th. But what was curious, if you look down the street, well, you can barely see down the street. Across the street, there's another linden, and there weren't bodies underneath it. There weren't bodies. Okay. Why so many bumblebees? Mason and I have gone back and forth on this. Right behind the Target is a 32-acre field that has crimson clover. It's had crimson clover. The property is for sale, so they're no longer maintaining it as a seed field. But this has been a seed field just immediately behind that Target store. It is also near the Coffee Creek nature area. So there are a number of open areas. This is getting towards the edge of suburbia, where this Target is. And perhaps this field has been growing bumblebees for 3 or 4 years. And perhaps that's the reason for the numbers. But it is also a long-distance flyer. It's not your usual, like yellow jackets, within just yards of their nest. This is a pretty strong flyer, and they are long-lived, and they're strong, active bumblebees. As I indicated, we have a native linden, and lindens also are known for, in some cases, of some bees showing up dead underneath them, bumblebees and honeybees. The European linden's a little bit more for bumblebees. And so one of the suggestions, mine, and particularly has been that there might be a synergism in action, not just the fact that the pesticide was sprayed, but also something, the bumblebees being just that much more sensitive to material because they were having to deal with probably a sugar in this nectar that for bumblebees and perhaps honeybees as well is toxic. We had assumed, perhaps erroneous, that it was a sugar mannose, but a recent study 4 or 5 years ago didn't find mannose in the nectar. Did find, however, galactose, and galactose is also one of those toxic sugars. So at this point, really no one knows. The other reason for the bumblebee losses in Europe has been foraging strategy, suggested as foraging strategy. Bumblebees use this plant almost exclusively, and so as with many things, how much venom you get in your system, how much pollen you might eat that your digestive system can't handle, the dosage makes the poison. So perhaps bumblebees with a different foraging strategy concentrating on this compared to the honeybees that are using a number of other types of sources. Honeybees apparently are on linden only at peak nectar flows, bumblebees at low levels of flow, before early bloom, late bloom, so they're getting a higher, the dosage makes the poison a higher level of exposure.
Dewey, the other thing I would add to that, I'll admit I'm a linden poisoning skeptic, but that's all right. I think the other thought that I've had too is when you see a linden in full bloom, you don't have dozens or hundreds, you've got thousands of bees in that tree. And I feel like sometimes you'll see low numbers, 5, 10 dead bees under a tree like that. I'm also inclined to wonder if there isn't just natural mortality during foraging, and when you've got thousands of bees at one site, you'll see a handful. This wouldn't address the issue. I absolutely, don't get me wrong, I'm a skeptic of poisoning in the case of Hillsborough and Wilsonville. I do think there potentially could be a synergism. I think that's right on. And when you potentially see hundreds of bees under other trees, possibly. But I do think we also just see some natural mortality during foraging when you've got hundreds or thousands of bees in a single location at a single tree falling. I can't help but think that that's part of it too, potentially, just to add that to the mix.
Yeah, when do you look for dead bees? In front of your colony entrance, right? But they do die in the field. And many of these trees are over a sidewalk. And dead bodies, just normal attrition, it could be rather than the issue of toxic nectar. The toxic nectar has the scientific evidence is weak and getting weaker. So I'm still going to say there might be some synergy. We keep it on the table. Okay, all right. So here's our foraging bombus. Here's our linden. Of course, it's a very unusual. They have to forage upside down. They learn how to do that. But as I indicate, we have a number of issues. The correlation is they were sprayed Saturday morning. Bodies started showing up right away. We know it's in the category of highly toxic. The Oregon Department of Agriculture took samples of foraging bees, dead bees, dying bees, and the foliage and the nectar. And in the case of Wilsonville, they found rather significantly high levels. So the correlation is that the Wilsonville kill was pesticide related, specifically this neonicotinoid. There are two groups of neonicotinoids. This is the group that is the nitro group, this compound that's in Safari, dinotefuran, and that is the same one that includes the imidacloprid. It includes the three specific materials that the European Union is suspending in December for a 2-year period of time. That the EPA has declined to do anything specifically with after they've been petitioned to do so, but are studying the issue in terms of neonicotinoids. So of the neonicotinoids, this is in the worst group, if we can say that. And this is absolutely probably the worst case scenario. And as Mace indicated, it's not just now, it's continuing. So that's a bit of the story. We'd like to now have it open. Mace and Xerxes has taken the lead in terms of getting some information out there. There's been articles in the Oregonian. There'll be an article coming up in Bee Culture that I've written. But we wanted to have Mace try to fill us in now for some of the rest of the story.
Sure. And I might actually also add just a few other details that I think are worth thinking about too. I think, as Dewey clearly laid out, the situation at Wilsonville is probably a tragic mistake, right? An accidental poisoning, people did what they shouldn't do. What's going to be, and therefore, it's actually been a great opportunity to raise the awareness around this issue. Since that time, we've established, we've established a website because we've had so many phone calls and so many people contacting us, emailing us, saying, oh, I saw dead bees here, I saw dead bees there. And so we've sort of initiated just right off just a quick website where people could go, and if they see dead bees and whatnot, they can record that. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the other things we're working on, but I got up my head of myself there a little bit. The Hillsborough poisoning, for me, is a particularly interesting one, and I'm very curious about the results because it's what we would say it's what we call an on-label application. It's a perfectly legal application. Nobody made any mistakes. One detail that I think is important is that those trees in Hillsborough weren't treated this year in March, but they'd also been treated the previous two winters. And one of our concerns about neonicotinoids is that in the soil, their half-life is 50 days if you take imidacloprid, another one of this group of really highly toxic neonics, 50 days to 1,100 days. So that's the time it takes to break down by half. Dinotefuran, the only details I have on this one indicate, I can't remember, I want to say in the order of 110 days. If you want details, well, let me get a few things out. But Dewey brought his book, I bought mine too. We've got, I'll talk a little bit more about this, and I might have shared this the last time I was here, but we've got details on the science on this where I've got information on the soil longevity. But the short of it is that it's quite possible that after 3 repeated applications, we see a buildup in the trees or a buildup in any plants that are treated. And so nobody, to my knowledge, none of the pesticide companies have done studies looking at sort of long-term use, repeated use, and what that means. And I think it's particularly important in this context because we're looking at an ornamental application at an ornamental application rate, which I'll get to a little bit more in a minute because this is one of the key things that Xerces is really working on right now. Most research is on agricultural applications. So you probably, if you've heard anything about neonics, you've heard about seed treatments, and when you seed treat corn, you actually wrap corn seed or soybean seed in a powder that includes something like glufosinate and imidacloprid, these different neonics. They then protect that seed when it's growing, and these are being planted on 90 to 92 million acres of corn right now, and on the order of probably 70 or 80 million acres of soybean.
And what percent of the total is that then?
Well, there are 97 million acres of corn planted, so let's say on the order of 90 to 95% of corn and 75 to 80% of soybean. That's probably easier number to grasp. We're talking millions of acres. In the case of corn, there's currently, at current uses, there's no documented benefit. If you had a specific pest problem, sure, you could make the argument to me and I would be supportive of seed coating. But prophylactically treating 90 million acres is, I would argue, in my Xerces hat, I also have to wear a USDA hat sometimes, but my Xerces hat would say that's ridiculous and we need to think more about integrated pest management. Seed coatings are a very low application rate, however. When we move to tree fruit or perennial crops, our application rates go up about 10-fold on average. And there we've got evidence that we're kind of, maybe approaching a sublethal level. So for example, your conventional apples, probably most of those are treated with imidacloprid or clothianidin for mite control and things like, or even aphid control and things like that. When we look at our ornamental plants, when we look at landscaping and landscaping contractors, the approved application rates, if we look at least at trees, where we've done an analysis that you can kind of read through in this publication, your application rates go up another order of magnitude, another 10 plus times. In fact, 10 to 60 times greater, in some cases maybe even 120, but let's say conservatively 60 times greater. Treated at those rates, at least if you look at something like Bayer 12-month tree and shrub protect, we know you create crabapple trees that are toxic to bees. In fact, there are a dozen of these planted outside of the Fruit Research and Experiment Station in Biglerville, Pennsylvania, right outside of Gettysburg, that 5 years after being treated are still killing bees. Now, our concern is that, I think most of these ornamental application rates aren't quite so, we don't see such an extreme event as that. But my concern, and what I'm very curious to find out from this Hillsborough event, is based on an approved application rate and a repeated application, how we see the buildup where we've reached this toxic level. Or are we looking at, alternatively, a situation where maybe there's a synergy between some sort of toxic compounds in the linden trees and this product, or is this not an issue at all? Is this just a fluke? And I'll be curious to find out. And at the moment, ODA is, they're keeping their cards close to the chest because they want to make sure they've completed their investigation. I will say though, in working with them over the last 3 weeks, they have been overall very forthright. They've been very responsive. They are responding at least to a dozen or more other reported bee kills across the Portland metro area, Salem, and Corvallis at the moment, and at least responding seriously. And so I commend them. I also want to reflect back on what happened at this target. I think one thing that should not be omitted in your understanding of the situation is the amazing response of the city of Wilsonville. They took the lead. So we were contacted, as Dewey said, on Sunday. We had 3 or 4 messages waiting for us on Monday morning. We called ODA. They responded by Monday afternoon, had a crew there. By Tuesday morning, they had an investigator. By Wednesday, we had a group call, and Wilsonville said, we have to stop this. The city of Wilsonville said, this has got to stop. So they really, with us, pushed to take some sort of action. On that Friday, when we wrapped those trees, Wilsonville, Sherwood, Canby, Oregon City, and I always forget the 4th one. There were 4 cities that brought out boom trucks. 3 landscaping companies brought out boom trucks. We had 9 boom trucks by the end of the day hoisting nets that were 60 by 45 feet that we had crimped together to shade cloth and dropped over these trees. It was amazing. It looked prehistoric, like these giant arms moving these trees, and the whole operation started at 10 o'clock. By 10 o'clock in the morning, was really kicking into gear and was done by 5. It was an inspiration. I will just say the response of the community. We had probably 100 people out there, and all this machinery helping. Now, in terms of where do we go from here, I'll tell you a few things that are worth you all knowing, being sort of Portland area residents. First of all, is that Earl Blumenauer's staff was pretty, upset's the wrong word, but they were very concerned about the situation. If you go to Earl Blumenauer's Facebook page, they've got a whole set of content around this and are, definitely taking this very seriously, and we've been having a lot of conversations with them. So that's been good. I think also nationally, internationally, this has helped raise awareness again. I was on a phone call today with the state beekeeper for Iowa. He was like, but it's just 55,000 bees. And, that's, if you think about it, as a beekeeper, I mean, really, what is that, a hive and a half at peak? It doesn't sound so much when you think of it from a beekeeping perspective. But we don't have any other documentation of a kill to this extreme in our bumblebees. I mean, 300 plus colonies is pretty significant. Imagine losing 300 beehives, and that's really the equivalent that we're looking at here. And the ability, what this has allowed us to do to raise awareness about being careful, at the very least, being careful with pesticide applications and the risks that are out there, I think that's important. But it's also raised enough awareness that we've had people reporting in these bee kills and hopefully helping us to better understand what's going on with the use of these products nationwide. So EPA, I was actually on a phone call today with the lead risk assessors at EPA in DC, and they are closely tracking this right now. So EPA is hungrily getting any of this information that's coming from the Department of Ag. It's helping them further their efforts to create a bee kill reporting page. And this is something that the beekeeping community, as well as sort of the pollinator conservation community, has been very interested in. And there's been some really nice movement there. However, looking at what we've seen now with these different application rates, one of the things that Xerces is working on is, and I'll be blunt, on the one hand, when it comes to agriculture, I tend to be pretty flexible. I'm going to come up with strategies where, I want to be able to work with the majority of agriculture to try to get the whole industry to move towards safer pesticide practices. When I walk into an urban landscape, my priorities change quite a bit. And I actually think we should move to take sort of a position similar to the entire province of Ontario, which has completely banned all cosmetic use of all pesticides. That's where personally, on a personal level, from a Xerces Society perspective, that's sort of the agenda that we're pushing as part of this. It's just to have, aphid-free roses, to have windshields that don't have honeydew on them, to have the perfect lawn just doesn't seem worth it when we look at potential or actual collateral damage from that pesticide use. So what we're working on is we actually we're developing a series of sort of action alerts that we're sending out to folks who are on our e-newsletters, and really asking people to, at this point, sort of in phase 1, contact the City of Portland, Portland Parks, not so much Metro, but county commissioners. We're really interested in seeing some sort of localized or regional, bans on the use of products like this for purely cosmetic purposes. If you've got termites, I'll be blunt, I do not want to see a ban on neonics. I do not. If you've got termites in your house and your foundation is crumbling, neonics are a lot better than putting organophosphate down there. If you've got fleas and ticks on your pets and you do use flea treatments, neonics are going to be much safer for your family and for your pets than other products. I'm mostly and most aggressively concerned with any situation where there's a potential exposure. So in this case, whether that's direct application, which is what we saw on Saturday and Sunday, let's say, and then like a systematic exposure where the pollen and nectar becomes contaminated and bees can be exposed, that's where I've got a concern. And that's where I actually approve of I call it sort of the European timeout, to step back and take a break from using these products for 2 years, specifically, and they didn't, Europe didn't ban neonics. They banned specific uses where there's a risk of exposure to bees and other pollinators. So it's seed treatments, it's applications to ornamental flowers, it's applications to tree fruits and sunflowers and canola, etc. And personally, I'd like to see sort of a similar kind of timeout. Here, it's a much more complicated and nuanced message, not nearly so nice as sort of the more, I consider our organization to be kind of a science base in a way. Certainly we're left-leaning, don't get me wrong, but we most certainly are. However, but I tend to be a little bit more on the conservative side where I want us to make sure we're nuanced. I don't want an outright ban on these products because I do think there's a place, I think there's a place for them. And so therefore it's this exposure issue that I think is most important. But, for the city of Portland, for Portland Parks, for for the Multnomah County, I think there should be some sort of action, and I would encourage all of you to call, your local representatives, your county commissioners, to ask them to stop using these products. As I understand it, and this has not been corroborated, but the rose gardens use malice, which is, I think malice is a midichlorian. But they're dealing with aphids on the roses up in Washington Park or Peninsula Park, I'm pretty sure. I've been told at least, and like I said, I need to get this corroborated, that they are using systemic insecticides. I'd much rather see a team of volunteers if they really need to take care of the aphids, go out there and knock them back and make sure the plants are healthy, because that'll do quite a bit to keep them at bay. So I brought a stack of our current action alert, which really is about asking the city to stop using neonics on properties they manage, require warnings. This is the other thing. You pick up a safari product, you pick up Bayer 12-month tree and shrub, you pick up Bayer rose. It'll tell you all the things, all the pests that it'll kill. The homeowner products tell you nothing about the fact that it's going to systematically get into the nectar and into the pollen. So at the very least, I think all regional, city, county governments should require that Home Depot, Portland Nursery, Target, in this case, local hardware stores, at least have some sort of signage at the store that says, look, you can buy this product, it's perfectly legal. However, recognize that if you apply this to a plant that's visited by bees and other pollinators, it is at least possible, if not likely, but let's say possible, that you're going to create toxic nectar and toxic pollen. And just as an example, I don't know, how many of you know of Garden Fever, the nursery over on Fremont? So, bless their hearts, I was there buying tomatoes on Sunday, talking with Lori and Richard, and they pulled all their midicloprid, all their systemic pesticides off the shelf and put signs down there saying that ODA has banned dinotefuran. This is one of the specific neonics. They haven't banned any of the rest. But all products containing dinotefuran have been banned from application for the next 180 days. And so they thought, while this is going on, they're going to pull all these systemic products off the shelf and put a sign up there that says, we're concerned about this and we're waiting to hear what's going on. I personally would like to see at the very least, other nurseries put signs up. And I think if all of you, when you're out there, if you feel comfortable talking with nurseries, talking with Home Depot, talking with Lowe's, and telling them to do more or less the same thing, they don't even have to pull them off, at least put some signage up there, getting our cities to require signage. I think that at least is a step in the right direction towards education. And then I mentioned of our interest in having just a ban on cosmetic use. So these are a couple of things that are going on. To clarify for all of you, what ODA has done is they have banned the use of dinotefuran. They banned the application. So you can still go buy it. It's still perfectly legal to have it in your garage, to have it on the shelf. You're just not allowed to apply it. You are allowed to apply products with imidacloprid, products with clopionidin, and highly toxic one, it's much less common. These you are still allowed to buy, to apply, the whole 9 yards, but they all have similar toxicity, similar mode of action, similar way of working, similar systemic properties. And so that's our initial push. And if you were to go to our website, I should have brought a sign-up sheet. Maybe, Tim, we've got something we can pass around. If people want to stay in the loop on our action alerts, because we're going to roll these out every month or so and kind of continue to keep, make sure we continue to learn and try to have some sort of something come out of all this. If Tim, if he can pass that around, that would be great. I'm trying to think of what else. I'm trying to think if there's anything else specific on this. Just for you all here, I brought 5 copies of our research review, our neonicotinoids killing bees. I'd like to sell you. I'd be happy to sell you this for printing costs. It's like $5 for us to print. I've got a handful of copies. If you want all the science on this up until February of last year, we're going to redo this because in the last year and a half, there's actually been quite a bit of new research, most of which is more damning than what came before, as more people have looked at it. Generally speaking, we're getting more information that makes us more worried. I backpedaled. I was much less worried about neonics 2 years ago. But the new research coming out is suggesting that I shouldn't be. If you do want to go talk with your local nursery, I brought copies of Protecting Bees from Neonicotinoid Insecticides in Your Garden. So I should have enough for most people here, which just outlines, gives you the common products that are available on shelves, helps you make the connection between Bayer 12-month tree and shrub protect and feed, and the fact that it contains a systemic insecticide. So this has just some background on what systemic insecticides are, what the neonics are, and some of the common products that are available. And so this is something you could take to a nursery and say, I've got concerns about this. I would love for you to go to Portland Nursery because they are not conservative in the Xerces sense on this. And while their staff have been really generally supportive, their buyers have not. And so I think I would be happy for that. Yeah.
Is there language to suggest for these places to use, you said to have them post something about these product warning, and I'm just thinking that if we had actually language to share with them, it would make it easier for them and they'd be more likely to do it and it would be more accurate. So if you guys could put together something like that.
Easy, yes, absolutely. In fact, if you go to our Facebook page, you can see some postings on what Garden Fever did that I thought was pretty good, but didn't have as much of the details on what these products actually do. So that's actually a great idea and is very easy for us to do. In fact, we've already got some examples of that here and there that we put together. So I can do that, send that out. Let me see. Okay, the other thing that I would add is, and one thing Garden Fever has done is they've actually now taken our 3 steps you can take to bring back the pollinators, and they've actually, in the place of the imidacloprid, they're putting out a call for people to actually create habitat and protect habitat, which gets at what Tim was talking about earlier, gets at what Dewey was talking about with the idea of these sort of nectar reports to really highlight that. And when I was here last time, I talked about our approach and the work that we're doing on habitat. I brought a couple copies of books that are after you buy Dewey's book, this is the next one that you need to buy. This one's next. And I've got a couple copies of that. And also seed mix. That we put together a wildflower seed mix that provides fantastic habitat for honeybees, for the whole range of wild bees and other pollinators. I've got actually packets that cover 1,000 square feet that you could buy and share, and they're a year old, so I'm selling them at half price. I know Frank and I were talking about this, so I got one for you, Frank. But if you want, I brought a number of packets of these that I'm selling for just $20 for 1,000 square feet of seed, and can give you some advice on that if you want. And then if you do all this, let's say you go out there and you try to get do some good stuff and get nurseries to do the right thing and plant some habitat. I also brought some habitat signs that can help you talk with your neighbors, talk with your friends about what you're doing on your gardens and your lands around your beehives to support them as well. Now it seems like I feel like what I'd like to do, if it's okay, just if people got questions or there's something about this whole bee kill that people want some more information about or want us to talk about, I think Dewey and I both would be happy to.
I want to hear from you on that.
Just a real quick question on the political side. Have you reached out to Amanda Fritz at all in regard to parks?
I have not specifically reached out to Amanda Fritz yet, and that would be she's on our list.
Well, I would suggest, I'm sorry, Tim, but this is a good organization that could reach out to her.
Yeah.
She's a person who reads her emails at 10 o'clock at night, and she reads every email. So all it takes is
beekeepers as a single voice, as a local, as a very locally based single voice could do that, I think that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
We did put out a press release to all the TV and radio stations and whatever else, Michael. But some of that TV, radio, and newspaper. And so just that alone might help. But I think good idea.
She does read every email, so you have to.
And at this point, it takes that personal connection, that reaching out and say, look, this is something we care about. I don't know if any of you all heard, but Thurston County commissioners petitioned the Washington Department of Ag to require that only certified applicators could use these products. So that in theory, the people who use them, were trained. Obviously, in the case of Wilsonville, that doesn't guarantee success, because that would have been a certified applicator who killed all those bees. And certainly there's another situation down in Lake Oswego where a certified applicator was purposely asked by a homeowner to spray 2 linden trees to kill the bees, because they didn't like all the bees in the tree. So, yeah, I know, that one hasn't got reported yet. I told the guy I need details, but I saw some pictures and was pretty stunned. But in any case, it just takes people asking and pushing. And so Thurston County, that's Olympia, Washington.
Olympia.
We did
South Puget Sound.
was great. Washington Department of Ag didn't fight though. That's all right. Okay. Yeah.
One issue that maybe just a little bit clearer. ODA has really extended themselves, and they're doing a fantastic job with all this testing. You recognize, as Mason pointed out, this is not agriculture, and yet they are being very aggressive. They recognize that they can't enforce homeowners with this new it's a 6-month ban on about 18 products. Not the flea and tick killer, not the ones for animals, but the sort of these cosmetic uses. They're not going to go after homeowners, but their ban really is effectively against those licensed applicators, such as landscape people, that might be in a position to use these compounds. It is only a 6-month ban, but it is, my gosh, a great step. They are really out there. They're really extended what their job is. You can sometimes hear the nervousness in them, but they're doing a fantastic job with these analyses.
Yes.
So you've been talking about a lot of local options for getting the word out and making some difference, but it seems that this issue has a lot more momentum. I'm amazed on Facebook how many places this is coming back at me from quite a distance, and I wonder what Xerxes or anybody is doing to try and leverage this incident to really make some sort of bigger impact on Kroger and Freddy's and Home Depot and whatever the sort of bigger message is, whatever the bigger effort might be besides just this local.
Well, I can tell you a couple of specific things. I mean, one of the things that I personally would like to see is some sort of federal legislation come out of this, or I'd like to see more pressure go to EPA. Right now, Dewey mentioned that EPA is doing a review. So instead of taking on the European Commission's restriction on uses, EPA, as part of coming out of particularly sort of a honeybee stakeholder meeting that happened last fall, they're only willing to go so far as to do a re-review of these products. It doesn't mean pull them off the shelf while we review them. They're just going to review these products, and they've given a timeline on that for 2018. So they give themselves 5 years to do a review. Now, California's in the midst of doing a review right now, at least on imidacloprid. That should be wrapped up, or should be wrapping up any day. But at the very least, I think EPA needs to be pushed to have that review take a year or 2 years. And this, part of it is doing additional research, and I can appreciate that. But my feeling is that there's enough evidence coming in that there are risks that need to be seriously looked at, that we should at least be restricting some of these uses where we know that there's at least potential. Take a precautionary principle approach, which I will admit is very un-American. But in light of 4th of July coming tomorrow, it's such a hero kind of thing to do. But I personally think that's the way we should go as we do this review. But as it is, they're taking 5 years, at least pushing to have that be 2-year process to at least look at the literature. The other thing that we can push on is that EPA is not required, at this point, they're not required to seek out independent scientific research. Now, if you hand it to them, if you put it in their face, they can't ignore it. But they will tell you that they don't have the money to go look for it. It's like, I don't know, $28,000 to pay some intern to do a literature review. I mean, heck, if they gave me $15,000, I could crank one out, in like 2 months. But apparently that's mandating that EPA actually look at the peer-reviewed literature. Doesn't seem like too much to ask, and at the moment, so much of what they get fed is by industry, and so you can't help but wonder if that data is biased. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So.
Mace has, needs to run earlier tonight, but we're going to kind of delay because of this is such an important subject. I'd like to give Mace a couple more questions from the floor. We'll take a short break, and then right before the break, I think we'll do our blooms pollinator and blooms report. And then after the break, then Dewey can kind of pick up where, if that's all right. But if you got a couple more questions for Mace before he has to take off, that would be good.
Yeah, fine.
Were there other species of bees that were affected by this?
It's a good question. So I think Dewey mentioned we had mostly Bombus bossnesensky, the yellow-faced bumblebee. There were a few individuals of Melanopygus, I call it the red-rump bumblebee. It's that beautiful orange one that's got the beautiful orange abdomen. Couple of individuals of Mixus, another species of bumblebee. There were a few honeybees. There were a lot of honeybees foraging, and a local beekeeper who keeps his hives about a half a mile from the site, at least anecdotally, feels like his bees took a huge hit. I'm not sure how that's panning out. I know ODA went out there. I don't think they collected samples, but they at least went and looked at the site. Okay, and it sounds like, yeah, maybe he's seen some losses. There certainly were a number of honeybees foraging in those trees. And one thing that's important to realize, too, is that bees do have variable, insecticides have a variable toxicity to different species. Not just based on size, but literally based on the physiology of the insects. And there's more data coming out looking at comparing, for example, honeybees and bumblebees, comparing honeybees and osmia, the mason bees, demonstrating that some products are much more toxic for one or the other, and that can flip back and forth. So,
what about flies or any other?
I saw surfeit flies, a couple of surfeit flies dropping. ODA found coccinellates, so found lady beetles, or one part of the parking lot. So there were a number of different things that were up there that looks like they either got hit or were dying. The surfeit flies I saw two of them were just spiraling around on the parking lot. Yeah.
This local initiative that you are doing, how are you coordinating it? Are there individuals from different insect supporting communities that, if wanted, can lend their assistance to be a part of that coordination?
Yeah, no, that's good. So the question is there something like, how are we coordinating, or what are we doing? I'll tell you, here's our challenge, is we don't have funding for this. That's what we're up against. Like, my most consistent source of funding is to do national habitat work, national training. I've got some funding to do some pesticide work. So our ability to launch a campaign and coordinate a campaign, which costs tens of thousands of dollars of staff time to do, is pretty limited. So our emphasis so far has been on coming up with tools for Hub or for individuals to take action. So things like these action alerts. We're also writing a letter to Target, asking them to pull these products off of their shelves. We're actually pulling together contact information for city and regional leaders for the Portland metro area, Salem, Corvallis, Olympia, San Francisco, New York City, a couple other places, and we'll be doing some direct outreach to those municipalities, to those leaders ourselves. And as we go forward, we'll probably be putting that same information out as action alerts for individuals in those communities, or members in those communities, to join in on. So if you, for example, went to our website, I mean, you could become a member of the Xerces Society. I would not stop you. Certainly that funding would help us. But even just getting and signing up for our e-newsletters, and then that way you get action alerts from us.
Is there any conversation about trying to assemble a volunteer committee for that local initiative?
That's an interesting idea. The idea of developing a sort of a local volunteer committee. I like that. Again, though, that requires somebody on my staff to have the time to coordinate and manage that. And then we need to always, like, it's difficult.
Or as a liaison sort of role, perhaps. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's always possible.
I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, because I do like that idea. I just have to figure out how to coordinate. Yeah, in the back.
Two-part question. The Lake Oswego incident you talked about, did the applicator in fact spray? And is there any legal repercussions if the applicator knowingly sprays?
Yes. actually you'd like to think the legal ramifications would be greater. As I understand it, for the Wilsonville case, the potential fines for the Wilsonville target, which was an accident, is maybe $1,000 to $10,000. I don't know if there would be any other criminal charges. I think that depends on what the investigation finds out and whether or not it was done purposefully. In the Lake Oswego case, which unfortunately was literally reported to me by a guy in his minivan in the Target parking lot as he was getting ready to go off and take some pictures and send them to me, which he hasn't done yet, unfortunately. That scenario strikes me as criminal, like it's actually a criminal act because it's in violation of the label. The label is the law. The label, albeit it's a paragraph on 13 pages, like 2 sentences on 13 pages, it does say, do not spray this product to trees that are to plants that are in bloom or when bees are present. And so that, in theory, I think in theory there could be criminal charges brought in that case, certainly fines of $1,000 to $10,000 for a certified applicator who knowingly treats a tree to kill bees. That would be against the label, therefore against the law.
My question is, the only thing I know about these products is what I read in the newspaper.
Yeah.
So what would be a good source that you could recommend us to inform us, the meeting in this case?
Right there.
What is that?
So this is our neonicotinoids killing bees. This is a research review. If you read the executive summary of this, it's like 2 to 4 pages. You would have all the background you needed. The brochures that I've got provide at least a very, this is, this is the, what do you call it? In Canada, they're Coles Notes. That's what I get being married to Canadians. Cliff Notes. Thank you. That's embarrassing. This is like, a super succinct summary of what these products are, how they work, and what are some common products on the shelf that people need to be aware of. Like this would be the sort of thing to bring to a hardware store and say, look, I've got concerns. If you look at the labels, if we go pick up that Bare Rose product, there's nothing on the label that says it kills bees. Can we put a sign up? Can we try to educate around that? So these two, both of these, I'm going to stick around through the break, through 8 o'clock, and can get you these or sell you these or, if you ask me really nicely, I'll just get it to you. Okay, last question.
Does the drugs, pesticides end up in the honey, and how does that work?
Isn't that an interesting question? I'm going to let Dewey take that one on. What do you know, Dewey?
How good is it for you?
To that point, though, before we get to the honey, I mean, it's a fascinating thing about neonicotinoids. They're, purportedly, they do have much lower mammalian toxicity, much lower toxicity, really, for all vertebrates. They move readily into water. That's something to keep in mind. Like, they'll move right into a stream and kill all your bugs in the stream. They'll kill all the fish food like that. But they've got a much lower toxicity, at least acutely, for us. I don't know what happens if you get exposed to a low dose over 20 years, or if you're a baby eating applesauce, where these products are in the apples. There's been very little data developed on residues in fruits and vegetables. If you spray a crop with a pyrethrin or with an organophosphate, heck, even with a carbamate, in theory you can kind of wash it off. Some fruits and vegetables more than others. If something's treated with a systemic insecticide, there's potentially low levels of residue in the fruit and in the vegetable. So in our conventional produce, it's a lot of this. I don't know what that means for us. Probably nothing in the short term, but I don't know what chronic long-term exposure is. Now, because this is in the nectar, I would assume that it just becomes part of the suite of insecticides that are found in our hives and in honey. It's hard for me to imagine it's not. And I feel like I should know that data. I should have that at the tip of my fingers, but I don't have data on that. And certainly the sort of thing that commercial beekeepers probably don't even want to think about.
And the answer is yes. We do pick it up in honey, pick it up also in bee bodies and in the hive. However, of the suite of pesticides, the average in an average bee is 6 different pesticides can be detected. This one is way down. It's almost off the radar. Not this one, but all of the neonicotinoids is almost off the radar. We're talking of issues of chronic versus toxic. This in Wilsonville was a toxic kill. What might be happening, what we're really scared of, is in Hillsborough could be chronic of this long-term exposure. How many apples do you eat? How many glasses or bottles of apple juice do we feed our youngsters? What is that exposure that they have? And so the neonicotinoids are there, they're at some level, but it seems to be at fairly low levels, at least so far. This is the number one insecticide available for us, the homeowner. The number one insecticide available for us to use. Has a huge number of uses in the home.
One thing to keep in mind too is its toxicity for insects is on the parts per billion scale. So, I mean, to get to a sublethal impact on bumblebees, you just need 10 to 20 parts per billion to affect reproductive success, to affect foraging, etc. So that's not very much. So you can imagine if those are the levels that we're trying to manage around, it's like, you know, risk managers at EPA or whatever, that's what they're trying to keep residues below. And so you can imagine that's not very much for us as well. However, like Dewey said, what do we know about long-term chronic exposure? And we just don't know very much about that.
We do know that at about 5 parts per billion, very, very tiny residue, behaviors change in honeybees.
Yes. They cannot find their way back to the
It's
hive.
not necessarily killing them, but it's changed. Yeah, can't find their way back. Their orientation is messed up.
Okay, we're going to talk some more about that strain of discussion here in a little bit. Just a short break tonight because this was kind of an impromptu. No.
And then we
this
can
is
chat
important.
during the break too.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
and
Thank you,
I'll-
I just want to remind everyone, if you want to become part of the Xerces Society, I encourage you to join the membership. I think the entry level is like $30 or $35. And it's great. You get lots of email updates. Also, we're passing around. Michael Carlson's going to be passing around little slips of paper. Anything, any information you want, if you want to be included on the Xerces Society group, or suggestions, comments you might have for us, please put those on sheets of paper. One time.
Oh, yeah. We had struggles with her. For the form. For comments about the group. Anything you want to write on. Okay. Back to us. Yeah, really. Transparent, is that nice? Thank you for all of
Yeah, what?
I am new.
I am.
I know. It's just it's a house.
I read up on the book, electronics.
I would love to.
Okay.
I would love to do that.
Okay.
And I'll bring my Kiwi Nui.
I read the filter section. Yeah, I mean the active part of it.
absorbed a little bit of this when I do some of that software. Because with the Arduino, you have so little resources. You have to be like, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's
Oh, it's called,
Right, we're all there. What's the, yeah, way higher. Back to challenge. Maybe I'll right. Given it's so much smaller. Like, look at the millisecond counter and goes up over like 600. I would be so I've got two other books I'm trying to read through right now. I can't tell it's good. Oh no, I'm sorry. Did you? Oh, that's what it's called. The door. Yeah, the deuce is the program. didn't have any time until now, but he's willing to try and help.
And I really don't have time now either, but I was.
Yeah, I don't have time either, so we should talk.
So we all have time to get together.
I'll try and coordinate a meeting. Okay. Yeah, sounds good about doing some more mapping stuff.
You recognize my name? Is that
Great.
why you're?
Yeah, well, I recognize your face.
What does that mean?
Just nice to meet you.
We talked on the phone when I was.
Yeah. I must have seen you here before, though. No,
Yeah, I think I told you. You were on my list of people to call when my bees were swarming about 3 weeks ago, and oh my gosh, somebody tell me 911.
Okay, yeah. Did you get that worked out?
I did. It was, I found the
You thought the queen was over in that
I
pile?
got a little leak, and I picked her up, and I put her into the inner cover, and it stayed. So it must have been. I guess that happened, and the queen's not with them. I made swarm 4 times, went up in
They're
the
like,
air.
where is she?
It came
Where
back.
is she? Wow.
Like,
I wonder if she's damaged or something. Why would she have moved? But at least she's there. She doesn't have to go anywhere else now.
So the high school breeds, but is she, I mean, are those like eggs that she laid before she left? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah,
She didn't,
when
she
you're
didn't
done.
look like very sweet, like she was different than the rest of them. Elongated, that much bigger.
But you have eggs now? Like you've been
No, I mean, I haven't opened it yet.
That's what you're going to have to do. And then if you see new eggs, then you'll know she's laying. I think everything's good.
Right, exactly. Right.
I don't know why they, whatever.
But they have because it's even more. They were scary and new queen good and new queen of not. So the old queen, it's really
I understand the old queen used to really have it. They when she lives a couple days by and then
right. But then once they have to go, they have to be quarantined.
they might fight each other and then maybe they're both lost in the I'm glad to hear those fodder. That's really cool.
Work with me that when I have issues and I see somebody to, you know.
Where are you at? Well, so that's what I would suggest is kind of posting on Facebook. Put anybody out. Okay. Yeah, so what are we doing first? Like, are you doing Dewey first?
Blooms thing, then, no, the break's done.
Forget the break. No, the breakout.
There's no breakout. The base was in charge of that.
Okay.
I mean, in place of it.
Okay.
It's like,
I don't know. I just started to
Okay.
did I respond?
You said, oh yeah, well,
We are, yeah, we're gonna, yeah, you know what, we had some discussion, but we never finished it because this whole poisoning thing had precedent. We spent so much time on it. I don't know if I followed up here. But, let me ask. You know what, let me find out, and I'll let you know. I promise.
Okay, if you want to start getting back to your seats, we're going to wrap it up here a little bit and get back into the discussion. Don't get back to your seats if you're up here seeing me.
I can probably figure it out because I'll have the transaction records for both. I apologize. It's important. I should be able to. I think the name comes in when I install it. I'm sorry. Now it makes sense. For some reason I didn't put the card in. I had to switch it on that.
That was kind of a relief.
Okay, so we're going to continue discussion here. First, we're going to do our blooms and pollen report for the month of July. But right before we get it, just another quick announcement. If there's anything that we've discussed tonight, things that you want to do, comments and questions for Mace or questions for Dewey that we're not going to get to tonight because this was a little bit more information plugged into one meeting. Please put it on the little sheets of paper that Michael passed around. Get it to us. We'll put that all together and we'll get that information to Mace and to Dewey. So if you need something else to write on or if you need a piece of paper, let me know. We'll try and get you something. But we'll collect those at the end of the night at the table in the back. A couple of other items. We have the Pub Zenger report real quick. Like Tuesday, July 9th at 5 p.m. is the extracting party at Zenger Farm. That's going to be Tuesday, July 9th. Remember, it's going to be sunny from now through September, so that should be fun. The second Saturday work party at Zenger is on July 13th at 11 a.m. They're going to be looking at leveling the ground, filling holes, trimming tall grass around the beachheads. It's actually kind of fun, the work parties. Make the apiary much prettier and safe. I'll also include a couple of inspections on some of the hives. Some of the hives we have out there now is, I think we're at 8, I believe. But I can check with Melissa and Stephanie on that. We will have work parties on the second Saturday of the month at 11 a.m. for the next few months. And they're working on adjusting that schedule as we get further into the summer. Tour de Hives is scheduled for Saturday, August 17th. They need volunteers. We were wondering if Tour de Hives was even going to actually happen this year, but we believe it still is, and we're hoping that it is. I spoke with Melissa today about it, and I've got a message into Sydney Mead, who is leading that group, and hopefully we'll get some energy behind that real quick and have the Tour de Hives, which is really fun. It's attended mostly by beekeepers, but also friends of beekeepers, and it's a great way to... Melissa has something to say.
If anybody is at all interested in helping to be part of that volunteer team, assuming that it's still going, whatever it is, please let me know so I can gather your information.
Okay, so leave a message with Melissa in the back of the room if you'd like to participate or be part of the part of the organizing team for Tour de Hives. And let me see if anybody is interested in or would like email updates from the Google group to come see Stephanie at the back of the room. She's got her hand raised back there. So information on the Zenger Pub B group. Okay, let me see. What else were we going to talk about? Notes, anything that you want to talk about with Dewey or Mace, make sure you get that written on a note, and we will assemble all those things and get them to those guys for answers to you. Something else? Okay. Bloom and pollination report. And Glenn and I, nectar and pollen report that comes from blooms.
Well, I brought some information here. I have one of my colonies on scale. I believe I've mentioned that in the past. And I want to tell you that, just give you about the last 10 days weights here. This is since I put the third super on. This was a swarm. And when I added the super on June 24th, it weighed, after I put it on, it weighed 254 pounds. The next day, it weighed 254 pounds. So I thought, what's going on here? It's something, I thought, well, maybe they took some time to, I don't know what they were doing. Yeah. Getting the feng shui going. And then the next day it weighed 255. And then the third day, 255 and a quarter. I should have left the damn third super off. Then they started in, so 258 and 3/4, 263, 268. That's a couple of 5-pound days there. Then July 1st, 269 and a half.
270 3/4, and 271 1/2. You see this trend? I remember from a couple of years ago that, or from the past, not just a couple of years ago, that I remember just thinking that a cold, wet June is better for honey production than a hot or a dry June. And I think we're in that hot, dry June here, and I think our honey flow is about over, according to my scale here. What is your thoughts on this? Let's see, Andy, you're here? He's not. Okay,
You got a small pass for this meeting.
Oh, I see. Well, I was into a few colonies today to see if I needed to super up. You know, some of them have a really kick-ass. The last time I was in 7 or 10 days ago, and I thought, you know, well, I should put a super on at least to see. Didn't need any. Has anybody supered up in the last day or two, or looked to super up?
We've looked. We have one that isn't doing anything and one that's going great guns. So.
Well, these are going great guns, but they're gunned out. I mean, they're just. Okay.
How many supers did you get then?
Well, it's just you mean total?
Yeah. Have you been removing them already?
Well, I've removed some because I need some honey, but most of them, I mean, all of the supers are back on then too. So, all right. It's kind of interesting. While you're doing that, Glenn, I want to remind folks that one of our members, Bill Catterall, has developed actually built a scale, a hive scale, and it's pretty cool. He's going to talk about it a little bit at the end of the night tonight, right pretty close to the end after Dewey's Q&A. But if you want to, it's a great idea. So just hang around because right before we do the raffle, Bill's going to come and demonstrate how he built it and how it can be used to weigh your hives. All right. Well, this is just going to be fun stuff. Yeah, I'll have to admit that when I get the American Bee Journal, the first thing that I always read now is the other side of beekeeping. George Ayres' column there about, he just really dissects plants and what their honey potential is and just whatever. I'm one of that 10% of beekeepers who really like the other side of beekeeping. The nectar sources, the honey, what's the source of this? So I thought I might have a soundtrack here to go with this, but that's not going to happen, so we'll just go forward here. I divided this up in various categories here. Some of these photos I just took today, went and walked around my neighborhood, and others I've had them for years that have been taken in this area. Things generally are early this year. The lindens sometimes go into July, well into July. Not this year. There's still a little bit going on, but mostly they're done for now. So this is one of my favorite plants. I don't know where I can get out of the way for you guys. Just sit down here. It's a fairly short blooming period, but the bees just love it. And another thing just to think about is that some of these plants in other parts of the country maybe or at another time of bloom would not be attractive because there's other things to bees. But right now bees pick out every little tiny thing that they can find because the big sources are gone. Many species of lavender, this is just really coming in production now. But that color is not real great up there, is it? You can look at here, let's put this over here. Salvias are also great for hummingbirds. Oftentimes, they don't visit the same things, but this particular one, the bell of the flower is big enough that the bee can crawl down there. One time, this several years ago, I heard buzzing, buzzing from this plant here, and it sounded like a bee was distressed, and in fact it was because it got trapped inside there. The petals kind of wilted a little bit on it, and it couldn't back out.
You saved the bee?
I did.
All right.
That really shows you how hairy those bees are and how they can collect pollen there. The spinosa will be, this is a cousin or at least a relative to our native devil's club. It's very prickly. And the blooms are just starting now.
Are they like Devil's Club that they want a fairly clean and pretty wet environment? Not that you might know, I'm just curious.
Mine is not in that.
Got it. Yeah.
It spreads, or it sends up shoots, but they're easily pulled up with gloves.
Ah, right. Invasive. Right.
Joe Highweed's coming on now. Many different species of dahlias. I can't remember what they're called. Like, what are they called? Buttons or different styles. The ones that have the opening, the nectar open there. I think it's called a button. Something like that.
Fluid.
They're not open yet, but they will be in July. Many different species of sedums. And the bees will really search these out in my neighborhood, even just little patches of them they'll be on. My neighbor, who's 93, grows these, and I take care of, or I mow her lawn, and the bees are always visiting these little tiny flowers that are kind of an old-fashioned flower.
I like your spider.
See, wouldn't this be nice with the soundtrack? I don't know what this is.
Portland Nursery to the rescue.
Yeah, maybe so.
Is that variegated leaf part of it?
Hey Glenn, go back. It's not epilobium, is it?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't tell.
That's why I said I don't know what it is.
Okay, not quite.
Well, send me your suggestions on that one. That might be there. This is now just opening up, this globe thistle, and I saw one in my neighbor's yard that just a little one like this, sometimes had 4 or 5 bees on it. Really attractive to them. All right, that's a terrible shot of this mullen here, but boy, they can really be loaded with them.
Well, it's like you attach a camera to the bee and the bee got too close.
No, it's just my crappy camera.
Okay.
I can't focus it,
You can't pump it on a bee. Huh?
Yeah. You can hardly see the bee in this. I was watching him. I didn't see where she is now.
Very humble.
Yeah, here's the bee here, just trying to get in there. Many different fuchsia species. This allium too or many alliums are very attractive, and this little patch here had this one flower here has 2 bees on it. Those are food plants, especially if you let them go to flower now. I'll sit down here so you guys can see. If you let them go to seed. There are some blooms that are starting now. Radishes, when they go to seed, when the flowers get pollinated, they'll form little seed pods, and they taste like radishes. And there's just thousands of them on the plant. It really gives you a bang for your radish buck. Trees here. Washington hawthorn is almost done now, but boy, they hum. Do you have any of these in your neighborhood? They can be kind of weedy trees because of the seeds, and they are the thorns on the hawthorn here.
Yeah.
So named because when you poke yourself, you yell. Here's our tree of the evening. Chestnuts are you get this in your nostrils, you'll look around for them. This is the American chestnut here, which is the edible one. The horse chestnut blooms 2 months ago or so, I think. This is fast becoming one of my favorite street trees. It's attractive and it blooms right when we want it to, and we kind of need some stuff. Not too many shrubs that I could find here. There are some privets that are ending up now. And I think this one's gone now. It was blooming in June, certainly, but this is a very nondescript plant. And you wouldn't even know the blooms on it. You wouldn't even see the blooms on it, but it just, you can, well, maybe not in this photo, but there are a lot of bees in here. There's these little tiny blooms. Look for that next June. Some viburnums are out now. Most herbs when they go to seed. A few cover crops going now. Is Mace here? Mace left. Is this Facilia part of a seed packet?
Yes.
Yes. Sure. Guess it's considered a weed. And these are not great sources, but they do attract bees occasionally. Yes, you can see the bees on them there. I can't read it. Looking through the foliage there, so if you have other favorite plants that are blooming now, or just other ideas to add to this collection, that'd be a good time.
Can you say what your email is?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see there, isn't it? Glenn at Pacifier. Pacifier.
I just noticed Bee Balm open.
Oh.
Just
Yeah.
yesterday and today, yeah.
Okay, Bee Balm. Another one is the Beauty Bush that I saw on my way here. That I thought,
and they smell so good.
Yeah.
So just so you know that when Glenn was going through his weights and his flowers and all his incremental things, this is kind of torture that he puts me through on a daily basis for my note taking. If it's not right down to the nth degree, it's like. But I think it's important that we have this information because, like I was saying earlier, if we could all start doing this, a friend of ours that we all know, Tom Lee, has been saying for teaching classes for 20 years or so, and he said, I told people for years, it doesn't matter what you put in your yard. And Glenn and I were talking about this. It really, for your bees and your apiary, it probably doesn't make that much difference to plant too many things. But had he been telling people this, and he beats himself up about this, over the last 20 years, tell everybody, plant all of these things. Plant as much as you can for forage. Then, of course, the bees would be healthier. They would have better protein and nectar sources and more food available, and we would have more honey. So we're going to do this every month. And then, thanks, Glenn. That's awesome. It was really good. Okay, Dewey, are you? So this is back to Q&A time. And again, what we don't get to tonight because we were kind of, we had to condense some things because we had Mace here, but I thought that was such an important piece of tonight's discussion that we really couldn't go on to our regular things. So next month we will have a breakout sessions where we'll have individual discussions and everything. So anything that we don't get to with Dewey, please write it down and we'll try and get those questions to him to get answered and to Mace also.
To keep up with the story, you heard to the Xerces Society website, .org, xerces.org, and the OSPA site also. We're trying to keep the chronology of these, the major stories that have come out. You've heard of Johnny Appleseed. Beekeepers for a while were planting The sweet clovers, yellow and white sweet clover, is similar to Johnny Appleseed, planting apples, so there's apple trees across the country. A popular way to do that these days is you've heard of seed bombs. Seeds themselves enclosed in like a ceramic material, mud, clay. You just toss them. You don't have to be like Tim, actually go into the property and put the whole plant right here. Just lob some seed bombs in. Okay, questions? Anything remaining from our earlier discussion on the massacre?
I think it was you, Dewey, that mentioned that the honeybee is more attracted, the bumblebee rather than the honeybee to linden. Is that something about the blossom or the bee itself?
Great question. Yeah, they do have attractions. Honeybees seem to be attracted when there's a large amount of the nectar available. Bumblebees will forage earlier and later when there supposedly are lesser amounts. It's not unusual for different bees to partition their environment different ways.
Earlier and later in the day, or earlier and later in the
Yes,
bloom
early and
season?
later in the day, and particularly in a bloom season. It's been documented for a bloom season. Yes?
Question regarding those
neonicotinoids.
How long have they been using those pesticides?
They are, it's actually a longer time period than we realized. They first came out in the late 60s. The patents have expired. So these are now offered by a number of different companies. So the patents have expired. Usually a company gets them about a 10-year, it's a 17-year patent period. It takes them a few years to get it onto the market after they patent a chemical. And so usually they figure they have about a 10-year run before then it's open for anyone to use. So they've been around. They weren't always the #1 most popular material, but they certainly have become. Yes?
Neonics are so diabolical. What about Nicotiana? Presumably they're derived from?
They are a chemistry derivative of the nicotine plant. So chemists have looked at what is so toxic about nicotine, the natural ingredient in plants. And they've taken that chemistry, they've made cis and trans isomers and moved some things around, which chemists can do these days, and have come up with these categories. So each of the different names, imidacloprid, dienofuran, they are basically that basic chemical structure with things moved on the extremities to different places.
So should we be ripping up our Nicotiana blossoms?
That can produce that whole group can produce some toxic nectars, but usually it's a dosage, usually not to any degree. The other, of course, very good example is the pyrethroids. Pyrethroids are the same thing. Chemistry made up compounds of the pyrethrum, which is the chrysanthemum flower derivative. Okay? But completely made up chemically, these things. Yes? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You mentioned there were two major groups of neonics. Nitro was one. What was the other?
Cyanum.
And then the other question I had, just real quick, was aside from disorientation due to low level exposure, are there any other behavioral things that there seems to be evidence for?
There are a couple of papers illustrating they really mess up short-term memory. The other one that we're really concerned is they speed up the aging process in honeybees. And bee colony is a delicate balance of different age groups. And you start doing that, which we think Nosema is doing as well.
Again, at the 5 parts per billion sort of thing?
At that very low levels.
Okay.
So we're going into July, and maybe it would be a good idea to kind of review some of the things beekeepers should be thinking about doing this month, or things to look out for, precautionary moves to take.
Okay. July beekeeping. What should we be doing? What we should be thinking about? What's your #1 issue in July, Glenn? Tortured tip.
Weighing the scale. Gotta weigh that scale.
Well, usually our honey flow goes till about the end of, or the 3rd week or so of July, roughly. My scale is telling me, a little bit different this year, so I'll checking to see if I do need to put on supers. That's it. Maybe start extracting.
That was my issue last month. Remember, June is a super month. Make sure we have over supered. At this point, some beekeepers that have time are actually going through and pulling frames. Make sure the strong colonies still have a little bit of super space. It's too early to go back down into brood chambers. Generally, you got to take the supers off. But some beekeepers will be doing extracting by the end of this month. Okay.
What about neem oil as an alternative to some of the pesticides?
Neem oil as an alternative. This again is one of these materials that is a natural derivative of plant tree from India. It has not caught on, and I'm not sure why. It has some uses, but is not one that has become a real favorite for particularly large-scale pesticide applicators. I'm not sure why. I think many of these natural derivatives have to be fairly concentrated, and that's why they've gone to the pyrethroid, the neonicotinoid group, so that they find the killing part of what that compound is all about, and they can enhance that. That hasn't happened with neem.
But no problem with honeybees with neem oil?
No problem with honeybees. Neem oil, I believe neem oil is a very bad aquatic killer. It gets into aquatic systems and kills all the beneficials. But you heard also, that's the, if we got going on neonicotinoid, boy, we can enlist some help among the aquatic folks, because boy, it really can mess a stream up very quickly. Back.
Yeah, we've, with the hot days, the girls have been hanging out a lot on the porch. You need to pop the lid up a little bit to vent it, or?
Ventilation of colonies. On hot days, you'll see them hanging out, bearding at the front. You might even see a very unusual washboard movement where they're all sort of moving like to some silent song in their heads. They're all sort of in sync, moving up and down like a synchronized movement. We really don't know what bearding is all about. It is thought that it's just very warm in there, and so like in the city, everyone comes out in the stoop at night, and the kids come out and play, and we get the water out. The bees must be sort of emulating that like we do. Benefit from upper entrance. There are people that say, I absolutely don't run colonies without an upper entrance. Others that say, I've never had an upper entrance, so it's all personal preference. You might try upper entrances on those that are bearding the worst and see if it makes a difference. It probably won't, but try it. Clement.
If Tim can tell the story better, the swarm moved in on the black metal pole.
Oh, yeah, let me see, I don't know if
anyone else has gotten a call, but there's been several calls that I've received from different people about a swarm that moved into a black metal pole over on the corner of North Vancouver and Killingsworth. I'm sure, Brian, you've been over there a few times.
Haven't heard of it.
It's amazing. I mean, I've had 2 different mail carriers call about it, and then a couple of bystanders, one of the people that works there at the bookstore. Anyway, Rosanna called us about it. I mean, it's not a swarm. I mean, it was a swarm initially, and it found a hole about the size of a quarter in the side of a signpost post, a big black, probably about a dinner plate size diameter, and it's painted black, and it's full sun all day long, painted black, and it's steel.
See, nobody forced them to go there.
Yeah, so they went there, and they've got about 4.5 feet off the ground. There's a perfect bee-size hole, but probably about 1.25 inches diameter hole, and they're just foraging. Well, a nice day in the morning. I went there, about a week and a half ago, and they were foraging, bringing back pollen and happy. And they thought, boy, we got an indestructible colony here. Hi.
The point is, just think about that. When you see your bees on the outside.
They couldn't beard on that thing because it was scorching hot to touch. So they were like, ouch, running and jumping around. But anyway, I'm concerned about that one because I think somebody's going to stick a can of Raid in there or something. But there's no way to get them out unless you want to hit them with a bee vac, and that's probably not going to work.
But once again, my point is, if they can survive that,
they can survive your big 2 deeps.
Of course, when you look closely at those bees, They got like Velcro on and dark shades and gang insignia.
Some beekeepers do like to put an extra cover on colonies, just corrugated tin or plywood. And if you put a little, put it up off of the cover, you'll even get some air circulation inside of there. So if it's a concern, that'll help too. Yeah.
As beekeeping has become more popular, what effect do you think it's having on the native population? Is the competition getting fierce?
Whoa, boy, that's a great question.
It's a good thing that Mace isn't here.
Yeah.
Well, according to the bee kill, our populations are good. Native bees.
Right, just
Yeah.
for a local sample, yeah.
Local sample, unfortunately, unfortunate way to sample.
Yeah,
was
it
good.
could be.
The research study when Africanized honeybees moved in areas where there were already existing beekeeping, they completely displaced European bees. You can't keep the two together. The European bees just are outcompeted by Africanized honeybees. And initially, in looking at some particular plants, we thought they were also replacing the native social bee, the so-called stingless bees, the bees of the American tropics. As it turns out, that's not the entire story. The native stingless bees have changed what they forage on and the way that they forage. So we don't think actually Africanized honeybees coming into the Americas have actually made any other bee go extinct. So, what they might be doing for other bees, for number of crops, we do know competition is good. Bees do a better job pollinating cranberry, blueberry, squash, if there are also populations of native bees present as well. So the short answer is, boy, we really don't know. It's a good area to look at in terms of study. Right.
When Mark asked this question, I just had a couple of other thoughts. Some people I've talked to that have experienced lots of swarms this year, we open them up and they're pretty honey bound. So that would be one thing that people might be able to do is move some of their frames around and try to give the queen a little bit more room to beef up populations prior to the winter. And also water, so that the bees aren't going to the neighbor's kiddie pool, stuff like that would probably be a good thing to do.
Supplemental water for July. Brian makes an important point. In our apiary, generally, we have some production colonies now, and those that have a couple of supers on, should have a minimum of a couple of supers on. But then there are the other colonies that we started, that we split, that were our swarms that we captured. They're still needing sort of basic management. One of the things that they can, I've had a couple people come up and say, well, I put a super on, but they have completely ignored the super. They haven't gone up through the queen scooter, or they just stay where they are. And sometimes this may be this condition honey bound, and that is the bees have stored honey and then pollen between that and brood, and they're just not breaking that basic structure in one or two boxes and not expanding into boxes that we would put on top of them. The point being that some beekeepers also like to move frames around. So with your management colonies, it's still great July management to move frames, individual frames around, opening up if you see that condition, or also particularly trying to strengthen the storage of those that seem already to be too weak. Sometimes if we get package bees, their claim to fame is that they develop well in the spring, but their bad side of that, the bad part of all that, is that they then stay too big in the summer, and so they're eating a lot of resources. At this time of year, a number of the commercial beekeepers are thinking of ways that they could use those